Hey folks, Paul here. Thanks for tuning in once again to RDTV for the second of our three-part Talk and Drive series using the new GT4 DLC for RaceRoom Racing Experience. Last time out we drove the Lotus Evora GT4 for RaceRoom in Brands Hatch, Indy, and this time we're going back to the same track. We're starting from the same position on the grid, P6, but we're driving the long-awaited, very long ago announced KTM Xbow GT4, which is here. Now, the Xbow GT4 was announced well over a year ago now, and as such, it's attracted quite a few liveries. When we spoke to Alex JF in our interview on the 23rd of November, the original plan was for the Xbow GT4 to be a single class car. Since then, they decided to build the GT4 category, and as such, they brought the Evora and the Porsche Cayman to the series. But prior to that, they'd gone and created quite a few liveries, which you can see on screen now is a substantial number of livery sets for the car. So the Xbow GT4 will come with plenty more shiny new graphics, but we're having this one because we like the look of that. We're driving Brands Hatch Indy again, as I say, 102% AI, all the exact same settings that we used for the Evora, and we're going to do a comparison. As for those of you that didn't watch the first video, we've already spoke to Alex and JF about the technicalities behind the car, the physics, what's gone into creating them, but what I'm hoping to do with these Talk and Drive videos prior to the release of this DLC is to give you an idea of what it feels like from the cockpit, from a sim racer's point of view. So there'll be some subjective opinions of my own about how the car handles, how it feels, how it's represented in game, and how it compares, of course, to the other GT4 cars that make up the DLC. Again, a little disclaimer, I'm using a work-in-progress build of RaceRoom and a work-in-progress build of the GT4 cars, so potentially what you're seeing on screen may fall below the standards of the final finished product that's coming out November 28th. It's the 24th of November today, so we are close to final release time, but I just want to put that caveat in there that these cars are still being worked on up to release day. Okay, so I'm going to cut now straight onto the track and we'll see you in a moment. Okay, we're ready to go, so let's hit the track. We're starting P6 once again. We're at Brands Hatch. Let's see what we can do. We were third last time out, so let's see if we can better that with a different car. Much slower start this time. We've got a turbo engine in the KTM Xbow, and as such that bogs down a little bit more than the immediate power demand that came from the Evora we drove last time out, but still it's got plenty of grunt, and we've managed to get it back into P4. Oh no, we've got a guy coming up the inside of us in a Graham Hill bend, so we'll give him a little bit of room. We've had a bit of contact as well, just for good measure. Somebody thinks he's in a touring car, so I will let you go, sunshine. Don't want to have that fight today. And there's been a crash up front as well. It's all been happening on the opening lap at Brands Hatch Indy. Now, as I've just mentioned there at the beginning of this video, the key difference between the Lotus Evora that we've just been driving and this KTM Xbow is the engine type. The Xbow benefits from a turbo, which is the only one of the GT4 cars that's currently available in sim, or that will be available in sim, that has turbo power. And as such, that gives very different engine characteristics in comparison to either the Evora or the Cayman. The power demand, or the power demand, the power the engine gives you is not as immediate as it is in the other two cars, and for that requires a slightly different driving style. So driving the Xbow around a track like Brands Hatch momentum is very much the key to a successful lap time. Keeping those revs high, keeping the engine in the main power delivery curve it needs to be to pick up successfully out of the corners. Now this is fine when you're driving on your own or you're not involved in heavy traffic, but when you're in a wheel-to-wheel situation, this can present a few complexities, because when you're dicing the track position with another car, you're not necessarily always positioned in the ideal place that you would want to be if you were driving solo. And you can often be compromised if you're making an attacking move or you're defending one corner and want to come out of the corner to protect the racing line. You may struggle to pick up the power as well as some of the other brands that are available in the GT4 pack at the moment. But this is one of the interesting nuances of this car compared to the others. And in some situations that will be a benefit and an advantage to you. And in others it will be a bit of a disadvantage. And we've already spoken in the last video about the BOP, the balance of performance that's been applied across this class. JF, Alex and the Sector 3 guys are very confident. Look, see how the car's pulling away now. The Porsche is slightly faster in a straight line, but not as good in the corners. Porsche pulls away down the straights. But yeah, Alex and JF and the Sector 3 guys are very confident that the BOP applied to this category will provide, on balance, a very competitive field of cars, where in some circuits, on some tracks, in some situations, one car will be, change gear pole rather than gesticulate, one car will hold an advantage on a certain kind of track in comparison to another one, but over the balance of a racing season, that'll equal out, and that's something I personally really quite enjoy. Now with the Xbow, this is quite an aerodynamic heavy car. In fact, Alex, and he can explain it far better than I'm capable of, so I'll refer you to our interview of November 23rd for more info on that. But actually Alex gave some good insight into the real world KTM Xbow, that were GT4 that we're racing here, in how the aerodynamics are really quite advanced, to the point where race organisers have mandated a minimum ride height this car can run at in order to negate some of that aerodynamic benefit that the Xbow holds over its GT4 rivals. Now what does this mean to us as a sim racer, driving the car and feeling it in our hands through our steering wheel? Well, we've, in comparison to the Evora, and absolutely certainly in comparison to the Cayman, the Porsche Cayman that we see in front of us, this is a much more planted car than the other two. This really does feel very evenly balanced by comparison to the others. I feel like I'm driving a much stiffer car. I'm feeling like it's flatter to the road than the other GT4 cars, and as such it doesn't suffer from as much disturbance on pitch and roll or anything like that. It really does feel like, best way to put it is, a more stable go-kart. So it's not the skittishness that you get with a go-kart from the small tyres and the... Oh, it passed again. It's got the characteristics of a kart in terms of its stiffly sprung nature and the fact that it's very stable in the corners, but obviously then with the benefit of much bigger, fatter tyres and aerodynamic benefit as well, which gives you almost, by comparison to the other two at least, a little bit more of a straightforward, a more basic driving feel, much more planted, much less challenging drive. But that's compensated. You may think it's boring, me saying that. That's compensated, as you can see, by the fact that the car is considerably less, well, slower, basically, in a straight line than the Evora or the Cayman, which on a track like Brands Hatch, which has a few reasonable sized straights followed by decent braking points, means I've always got a little bit of something to contend with behind me in terms of rivals that can shoot past down the straights but aren't as good either on the brakes or in the corners. And that's an awesome combination for single player against the AI racing, which, shout out to the AI actually. It's been a while, as is well documented here. I'm afraid I am not a time-rich person, so my time behind the wheel of racing sims, sadly, is at an all-time low due to various other commitments. And pretty much the only time I really get to drive is when making a video. So AI has become increasingly important to me. My personal preference in an ideal world would be a good organised online race at race department when I've had time to practice. I feel on top of the car and track and I can really get into the thick of the fight. That's where, for me at least, sim racing really does come alive in those club events or in particular league races. But time doesn't allow it now, so I'm finding when I do get an opportunity to get on the rig, as he gets bulks me in front and puts me again under pressure. When I do get an opportunity to get on the rig, a quick AI race like we're doing now, no prior practice, just getting out on circuit and having some fun, has become increasingly valuable to me. And I think the AI in RaceRoom Racing Experience has now become one of the finest AI I've spent any time with, at least in sim racing. They've really stepped it up. For a while back in the day, there's a tendency for the AI to be slightly over aggressive, not particularly aware of where the user's car is, which led to a lot of frustration and bumping and banging. But they've done, have Sector 3, a really good job, I think, with that, especially with these, the GT4 cars that we're driving. And I've done quite a bit now against the AI, both of these videos, the previous ones, and a bit of other sampling of the cars before we did the interview. And without fail, even at a difficult track like Macau, which must be a nightmare to program AI to race against the tight confounds of that track, they behave themselves exceptionally well. So I honestly am not experienced enough in the game, in the current version of the game, to tell you if that's the behaviour that is exhibited across the range of cars, but certainly in the GT4s and the WTCR touring cars, which are my personal favourites as well. They're really, really, really good. But anyway, we digress. We are on to matters that are not related to the topic at hand, which is this: KTM Xbow GT4 upcoming DLC for R3E. So where do I personally rank this one against the other two cars? Now, I mentioned in my last video, the video of the Lotus Evora, that's my favourite, is the Evora. I like everything about it, from the fact it's a Lotus to the feeling you get behind the wheel, to the audio, to the way it performs in comparison to the other three cars. The Evora's my number one. And if I'm honest, it's a clear number one. But the KTM and the Porsche are a real difficult call for which one I like the most. They're very, very, very different cars. As I said already at the beginning of this video, the KTM is infinitely more stable, both on the brakes and in the turns, than either the Porsche or the Lotus. If one was to be doing hot lapping, then that doesn't necessarily bode well for the KTM. That makes it a slightly easier driving experience, which in turn is a slightly less engaging one, a slightly less interesting one. So on a hot lap scenario, Porsche would be number 2, this would be number 3. But in a race, the KTM Xbow really shines because of the things we spoke about at the beginning. It's massively stable. The car will do whatever I want it to do. No questions asked, no problem. Which makes a very easy driving or racing experience. I can go inside, outside, I can do a late stab on lunge on the brakes, I can unsettle it a little. When you come in, you find the closing distance between you and the car in front is greater than you expected. You can unsettle it by jarring it up the inside under brakes a lot more than any other car in the category, or any other car really that I've driven recently in sim racing. So from a racing point of view, it's really good for positioning, but it's also slow in a straight line in comparison, as we've already mentioned. Straight lines and pick up out of corners are not the KTM Xbow's forte. It's deceleration and cornering ability where this car really shines. And that means, as I am doing now when I'm racing against the AI, that really forces me to stay on my toes, because I'm constantly being challenged from behind by the faster cars in a straight line, but then having the advantage again, as I say, in the turns and under braking. So that keeps me really focused on trying to position my car either at a defensive point where I don't allow the faster car an opportunity to get by me on the straights, or an offensive move where I can't defend the car behind and let it go past, but then look to counter that quickly into the next turn, either by setting up a pass 2 or 3 corners in advance, or by using my superior stability and superior braking power to throw it up the inside, all guns blazing. And that's awesome. That's really, really good fun. That's something that I can imagine, if racing online against people that are competent and confident, could provoke some really enjoyable online races. And again, even now against the AI, look at that Porsche coming up behind me now. I'm going to let him go because he's got the inside into paddock, and it's not. Oh no, he's backed out. He's back. I'm still going to give him space, but the closing distance between us is so rapid due to his extra horsepower. I really had to think about what I wanted to do about it there. It's not a case of he's behind now, he's never going to get an overlap, and as long as I keep my nice neat lines and get on the throttle nice and early, I've not got a problem. I've really got to think about what I'm going to do about the cars that sit behind me. And that's awesome, because defending is an art often overlooked in motorsport. Everybody likes to be the offensive player, everybody likes to be the striker in the football team going for goal, but having a good defensive race is just as satisfying as coming from the back of the grid to the front. Oftentimes, for me at least, even more satisfying. Oh yes, we will take that. Thank you very much. That is what you call more luck than judgment, that pass. I think I missed the back end of that Porsche by a very fine margin, shall we say. But yeah, a good defensive race is often as satisfying, if not more so, than a good attacking race. And in this car, you will find yourself in that position on a very regular basis. And if anything, actually, it makes this a good learning tool for a less experienced sim racer to really understand. I'm going wide and I'm giving him the line and letting him have it, so we've got some more cars on the screen while we're racing. It's not particularly a move I would make in a competitive environment, leaving the door wide open for him. in a panic bend. But yeah, it's a good learning tool actually for the sim racer to understand how to defend properly without losing armfuls of time and compromising your own race. And yeah, I think a lot of people, well, I hope anyway, a lot of people will, bit of bumping and barging going on there. That's bad timing as I'm talking about how good defensive driving can be. But, I hope a lot of people will see where the fun comes from, that aspect of motorsport, when they do drive this car. But inevitably, there's also a danger, certainly in an online environment with a mixed bag of different skills and experiences, there is a danger that this could encourage some pretty big accidents due to the nature of the differences between the two cars. But in terms of lap time, speaking with JF, the cars should, on balance, be around 1/10 between them, between all three. So even though I'm saying this one's massively down on the old straight line speed, it more than makes up for it in the corners. That's all I do. A little bit of kissing the grass. It's never fun. So don't do that, people, because it may have downforce, it may be good in corners, but it ain't no rally car. So there you go, that's a lesson. It's a lesson for you all there. Nearly had ourselves a very bad time. So again, for me, this is just another big actually, and this can't be stated enough, another big thumbs up to the BOP work that Alex Hodgkinson, the team at Sector 3, and more important than anything, the team of beta testers that have slogged round the various tracks for hours on end in these cars have done. They've produced something really quite exceptional in that regard. But they've got three very different cars to perform in a very similar fashion over the course of a whole lap, even if what they're doing in the corners is very different things. Now, this car, I've already talked about the way it feels. It feels much more planted, much more stable than the Lotus that we drove last time out. And again, I praise the force feedback of the GT4, well, the gaming, the sim in general, and the GT4 in particular. And that praise I need to lavish on this car as well. The force feedback in the KTM Xbow is a very different feeling, but it's still giving me everything I need to know about how the car is behaving underneath me. It feels really intuitive. I can feel what the tyres are doing. I can feel what the weight of the car is doing. I can feel the bumps in the road. I can feel the understeer, the oversteer. It's the force feedback is a tour de force in the GT4 category, a RaceRoom Racing Experience, and that applies once again to the KTM Xbow as it did with the Lotus Evora last time out. I'm running a Logitech. No, I'm not at all. I'm running a Fanatec even. It ends in tech, so it's similar, apart from about €500 price difference. I'm running a Fanatec Club Sport version 2. I've got it pretty much bog standard settings as to what comes with the profile in the same, apart from mapping a few buttons, and the feeling's exquisite, really good. So well impressed with the KTM Xbow GT4. I'd rank it, to go back to my initial question that I never answered, I'd rank it my second of three in terms of favourites, the Evora being number one, the GT gonna fly, go away, the Xbow being number two. So yeah, hope you really enjoyed it. Hope it gave you again a bit of insight into what you may or may not find should you purchase this pack for yourself. I'm going to go now because this little fly is really bugging me. But yeah, I've been Paul Jeffrey, this has been RDTV. We've been doing a talk and drive in the upcoming GT4 DLC RaceRoom Racing Experience. We've been driving the KTM Xbow. If you've enjoyed this video, or even if you've not, please give me a like, subscribe or a follow on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Come say hello at racedepartment.com, and until next time, Stay safe, catch you later. Sim racing's awesome, so are you guys. Bye bye.